When the United States Congress needed an expert in the over-the-counter stock market, one name kept coming through the database over and over. My father, Larry Formato. See, he was the king of the penny stocks. He was the expert. Before the Wolf of Wall Street, before any of that, it was Larry Formato. See, he controlled the market. He owned the market because he had the one thing that no one else had, the power of the Mafia behind him. So when the government asked him to help create the largest securities legislation since 1933, do you know what he got in return? Nothing.
Orange, New Jersey, that's where I was born. 1951, the youngest of 4 kids. My father worked in a wire factory. My mother worked for W.T. Grants. I had rheumatic fever when I was a kid, spent most of my younger years in bed. I wanted to go out and run around and play with the other kids, but I couldn't do it. Life expectancy back then for rheumatic fever, probably 15 years. If you got to 15 years, you got a lot. My mother took me to Canada, and there was a cathedral there. I think it was St. Anne's Cathedral. The deal was you get on your knees and you climb up all these stairs on your knees, and you say a prayer on each stair. Well, I didn't know any prayers to say anyway, so. But my mother, made me do it. So I don't know if it's true, not true, but I know one thing. That was the first miracle of my life. I never had rheumatic fever after that, and I didn't have any after effects. I was 10 years old when my Uncle Johnny bought me a guitar. Man, I loved that guitar. The strings were like this far off the neck, and just about impossible to play. I didn't know how to play anyway, but I thought I knew how to play. Maybe a couple of years later, I met a couple kids in the neighborhood, and they all had guitars. And eventually, we started a band. It was a lot of fun back then. Times were great. Times were good. My father, he would be at work in a wire factory, come home with wire grease all over him. I mean, just stained with oil, and his hands were all cut up. And sometimes this poor guy worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to support us 4 kids and 2 mortgages, but he did it. And we were happy, and there wasn't really much we wanted. We survived. I guess I was a freshman or a sophomore in high school, and the band, we were still together and writing songs. And I wrote a song called There's a War to Be Won. And man, we just thought we were off to the races and we were going to be stars. And it was a great song, during the times. The Vietnam War was like going crazy, and I don't know. It just didn't pan out at the time. It was summertime, and everybody was going down the shore at that time, and it was there that I met the love of my life. At that time, I was 17, she was 15. And for the most part, she was my first love. And we got married young. I was 18 years old when we got married, and she was 16. She was pregnant, and man, it was rough. So I opened up my own auto body shop, Center Auto Body. I just wasn't the kind of guy that could work for somebody. So I had this little auto body shop on Central Avenue in Caldwell, and we lived right on top of it. By that time, she was pregnant again, and pregnant with Sonny. I was broke. I didn't even have a car. I mean, it was bad times. So one day, this guy pulls into my auto body shop, and he's got a Porsche. And I look at the Porsche, and then I see who's driving. It's a kid I went to school with. This kid was a total fuck-up. And he's driving his Porsche. So I said, "Where did you steal the car from?" "I know you stole this car. This isn't your car." He said, "Oh, no, it's my car." I said, "Well, what are you doing? What are you doing?" He said, "I'm a stockbroker." I said, "Okay, well, what's a stockbroker?" And he tried to explain to me, I sell stocks to people, different companies, and this and that. I said, "And you bought this Porsche? I mean, are you paying, payments on it?" Or, "I bought it cash, man. I'm doing good." "Well, where do you work?" "I work in Hackensack." "Can you take me there?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll take you, come on." So I jumped into his Porsche with him in my dirty clothes, paint on my pants, on my shirt. Off we go to Hackensack, New Jersey. Mayflower Securities was the name of that brokerage firm. So I said, man, this is like amazing. I get to meet his boss and I go in the back room. It was an image. I can tell you exactly what he looked like. I'll never, ever, ever forget it. His name was John Engel. And John had this big ass pinky ring on, this big gold bracelet, and a solid gold digital watch. You pressed the button and it lit up. It was cool as shit. And he smoked Kent cigarettes. And I said to John, I said, I know him. I went to high school with him. And he said, yeah, that's cool. He said, what do you do? I said, well, I have a body shop. He said, well, you're pretty young to be having a body shop. I said, yeah, well, I've been doing it for a little while since I was a sophomore in high school. And but I know there's something more to this than what he told me. And the other thing I know is that whatever he's doing, is that really his Porsche or is he lying to me? Oh no, that's his car. Everybody here has cars like that. I said, well, if he can do whatever he's doing to buy that Porsche, I can do it better. Get rid of him and hire me. So we talked for a little while, and sure as shit, he said, okay, I'll give you a chance. And that's how I started. That was my introduction into being a stockbroker. So Ray was pissed at me. I don't know if he even talked to me anymore after that. But then I knew about this test, and I didn't know what. Like I said, I barely got out of high school. What do I know about taking tests? But what I did know was I knew Big John Formato, and Big John Formato was connected. And so I got a hold of him, and I said, man, did you ever hear these tests that they give to these stockbroker guys? And he said, no, what is it? I said, it's called a Series 7 test. And he said, no, I'll find out for you. I said, okay, cool. And so Big John was able to get copies. They were given 3 tests back then of the Series 7. And Big John got all 3 of those tests and the answers to them. And so I would go home at night, sit with my mom. My mom would read me the questions, and I would memorize the answers. And so that's pretty much how I passed the Series 7 test. I knew I didn't want to be like my father and wind up working in a factory or even beating on fenders for the rest of my life. So my passion was to be this stockbroker, to be what Ray had. I wanted to have nice cars and money and houses and all that crap. And these guys were doing it. And I know damn well I was better than these guys. I just needed to find my niche. I needed to find my way in.
Larry always loved the thought of making it big.
I didn't have a car back then. I didn't have any clothes back then. So my father and mother lived down the street from where the auto body shop was, and I walked down the street, went to my father's house while he was at work, and I stole his suit, I stole his shirt, I stole his shoes, and I stole his tie, and I started hitchhiking to Hackensack, New Jersey, every single day to become a stockbroker, and that's what I did. I hitchhiked there, and I hitchhiked home. I did that for 6 months. So I would get to this brokerage firm before anyone else would get there. And everybody would start coming in and sit down, and guys would go out to lunch. They'd say, hey, you want to go to lunch? I said, no, I'm good. I'm just going to stay here and work. I didn't have any money to go to lunch. So I just sat there and I worked all day. And what was my work like? Well, they threw a phone book at me and they said, this is where you're going to get your clients. Pick up the phone book, open it up, and start calling. I said, well, what am I supposed to say? Sell them stock. These guys were no help. And sometimes I'd get there at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'd work till 11 o'clock at night, and I did it 7 days a week.
Larry, I used to say, did not live unless he was under stress and pressure. He thrived on it. He loved it, and that's when he did his best work.
Well, one day John Engel calls me into the back of his office and he said to me, I just got to ask you something. I see you wear the same suit every day. I don't know how the hell you get here every day, and I sure as hell don't know how you get home. You never go out to lunch. You're always here all day long. What are you doing? So I knew I was going to get fired because I didn't have all these things that everybody else had. So I just said to him, okay, I'll tell you. I hitchhike here every day. It's not my clothes, they're my father's clothes. I don't have any clothes. I don't even have a car. So that's it. He said, well, just go back to your desk and wait out at your desk, and I'll be out there in a little while. So he came out and he said, come on, let's go take a ride. And I said, well, okay, where are we going? He said, don't worry about where we're going. Let's go. So got in his car, and God damn it, man, he took me shopping. He bought me suits, he bought me shoes, he bought me socks, he bought me ties. He bought me wardrobes of clothes. And I'm saying to him the whole time while he's doing all of this, I said, John, I have no way to pay you back. I cannot accept any of this. I can't pay you back. So he said, don't worry about it. So he pays for everything. Honestly, I don't even know how much it was, but it was a lot. To me, it was more than I could ever afford. And from there, he takes me to a car dealership. And we get out of the car and he says hello to somebody and they said, it's all ready for you, John. So John said, man, come and look at this car. So I go over there and this beautiful Cadillac.
America's #1 luxury car is Cadillac.
He said, you like that car? I said, oh man, I love that car. It's beautiful. Is that yours? He said, no, it's yours. I said, what? He said, yeah, that's your car. Get in it. Drive it home. Actually, drive it to the office and beep the horn when you get in front. So I got in the car. I still don't know what the hell's going on. I'm thinking it's a trick. It's a prank. It's got to be, something's wrong. So we get back to the office. I beep the horn. Wow, everybody's looking. And they said, in 6 months, you opened up more new accounts than anybody in the whole office throughout the whole country. And guess what else? I said, is there more? He said, yeah, there's $250,000 check right here for you. And that was it. I was on my way. So I leave John's office. I've got $250,000. I've got a new car. I've got clothes. Anyway, I couldn't wait to get home to show my dad, that I did this and that everything is going to be okay. And that's what was on my mind driving home the whole time. I got to do that. And it was kind of cool. It was really good. And then I went home to misery to my wife. I'm driving to work every day now. I've got this new car. Everything's going great. And all of a sudden, we're told that the firm is going to change names. There's going to be a new president. Bob Brennan was going to be the new president, and the new firm was going to be First Jersey Securities.
I see that same kind of imagination in hundreds of small to mid-sized companies whose new ideas, new jobs, and new technologies will continue to build America. At First Jersey Securities, we specialize in discovering such emerging growth companies for today's investors with vision. First Jersey Securities. Come grow with us.
The thing that I like the best about Bob Brennan is he knew how to take care of his people. He took us all to Jamaica, all his top salespeople. And it was great. Fuck that. Sorry. Actually, it was the Bahamas. It wasn't Jamaica. And it was there that I met all these top salesmen from around the country for First Jersey Securities. Bruce Bermel, Don Messenger, Bart Barrick. I mean, these were all big hitters. And actually, it still didn't sink into me that I was the big hitter. I was the guy that was outselling everyone until Bob Brennan pulled me off to the side and said, listen, Larry, I want you to always stay here at First Jersey Securities. I don't want you to ever go anywhere. And because I want you to stay, I'm going to give you overrides on everyone. I'm going to make you the sales manager of the whole firm. I still didn't even know what the fuck I was doing, never mind be a sales manager. I mean, if I tell you I didn't know one stock from another stock or what they did or dividends, or I don't know shit. So Brennan made me the manager of the whole damn firm. And I collected an override on every salesman. I got a call from Bart Barrick, and he said, I'm thinking about opening up a firm. I'm leaving First Jersey. He said, I'm wondering if you want to be my partner. I said, what are you, crazy? I'm not leaving here. I'm doing great. What do I want to leave? He said, well, you'll have your own firm. You and I will be partners. I said, I don't know, Bart, let me think about it. I never thought about owning a brokerage firm before, and I'll give it some thought. And that's what I did. I thought about it, and while I was thinking about it, I was thinking about my wife. And while we were in the Bahamas, I guess she probably got pregnant again, and so now we were on our third child, and she was pregnant, and now he's talking to me about making a move. And man, just a whole lot to take in. new house, new baby, new brokerage firm.
I don't believe that there was anybody better than Larry doing what he did and had accomplished. No, that nonsense with the Wolf of, what is the name of that show? Well, that's nonsense crap. That's just glitz and glamour.
Driving back to New York was a motherfucker, man. I hated it. Gave me anxiety, traffic all the time. I don't know what was worse, Harlem River Drive or my wife, ex-wife. Excelsior Securities, 60 Wall Street. We were going to, our first IPO, initial public offering, IPO, initial public offering. And we were doing it at $4. So it was me and Bart, and that was the whole firm. But, between me and Bart, it was like having 10 firms.
So I think by the time my father had gotten to Wall Street, he had multiple brokerage firms by this time, a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, and I think he was only, 26 years old when that happened. And I think for a long time he may have been the youngest person to hold a seat. I think it was maybe years later that actually a female that was a little younger got a seat on the stock exchange. So a couple of brokerage firms, seated in the New York Stock Exchange, and only 26 years old, and that's pretty impressive. It's pretty cool.
Brennan was not happy that I left. He wasn't happy that Bart left, but he was more unhappy that I left. And Brennan was funny. He used to send me over pictures of guys holding machine guns. It was a joke though. I mean, it was kind of funny. We stayed friends. And but my wife, she was just getting worse and worse, by the minute.
Even at 4 or 5 years old, I always remember a lot of arguing and drama kind of going on between my mother and my father. And I think that's ultimately why, my father probably got me out of that situation and sent me to West Virginia.
She told me one day, she said, you in that fucking house, you got that big fancy fucking house. You think you're this and that. You got a limousine now. I hope that fucking house burns down. So that was on a Wednesday that she told me that. And Thursday night, I was on a night league bowling. And I came back from bowling and I see all these fire engines by my street. And I pull up to my street and sure as shit, my fucking house wasn't on fire. And motherfucker. Can I prove that, she set the house on fire with her jerk-off boyfriend? No, but anyway, my daughter was in the house and the baby was in the house at the time. Sonny was in West Virginia with my brother. And my daughter woke up when the house was on flames and got my mother and the baby out of the house. And that's what happened. So because the house burnt, my mother didn't have any place to live anymore, so she went and rented an apartment in Caldwell. And I still had the apartment, and it was in Parsippany, actually. And Joan was back in the house. And I moved into the apartment with my mother. Became my stepbrother, but Ricky at the time said, man, Larry, you're a fucking bum, man. All you do is you go out and you fucking shoot pool, you drink, and you hang out, you live with your mother, you got no fucking money. What happened to you? You had all this fucking money, and you got nothing now. Look at you. This is this young fucking kid. He was like 17 years old, calling me a fucking bum. And you know what? He was right. It hit home for me. And it just so happened, it was right when he said this to me. I get a phone call from Bruce Permel, one of the guys from the trip to the Bahamas. And Bruce said, hey, man, can you come and meet with me? I got a guy, Don Messenger, and we want to start a brokerage firm. And I said, yeah, man, I'll come and meet with you. I was ready. I was ready to do whatever it took to get back in the game. And I went and I met with them, and their idea was to go out and buy a BD, a broker dealership, or brokerage firm. They didn't have one, and I certainly didn't have one anymore. I'd left Excelsior. I resigned from Excelsior. And so we were on the hunt for a brokerage firm, but we started this little company, DLB Financial Corporation, and we were acting as consultants until we could find this brokerage firm. And this bar that I used to hustle pool in, the In Crowd, Walter Williamson owned the in crowd. And one night I'm in there talking and I'm telling somebody I'm looking for a brokerage firm. And Walt says, you know, my brother owns a brokerage firm. You know, he's looking to sell it. I said, well, I want to talk to him. Can I have his phone number? Sure as shit. You know, the guy wanted to sell his firm. It was called A.L. Williamson and Company. And I bought A.L. Williamson and Company from the brother of the guy whose bar I used to shoot pool in.
I'm John Formato, and Larry Formato is my second cousin. He's my father's first cousin. Larry's father and my grandfather were brothers. Larry was in the brokerage industry. He was just starting out. He was on his way. And he asked me if I wanted, and he wanted to take me under his wing. And he brought me into a company called A.L. Williamson. That was my first introductory. That was A.L. Williamson was in West Caldwell.
We had to buy A.L. Williamson and Company, and I think the price for A.L. Williamson at the time was $30,000. And all we were doing was buying the license. We weren't buying a company that had, you know, a building or anything else. It was just the license. And so it was 30 grand. And Don didn't have 30 grand. Bruce didn't have 30 grand. I didn't have 30 grand. So I took a check and I wrote $50 on the check. And I spread the words out and the letters out. And I wrote the 50 in the corner of the check, and I spread that out as well. And then I signed the check. And then I went to the bank, and I said, can you certify this for me? And back then, they would just stamp the check, you know, and that was it. You know, you have the money in your account, and they certified it. They stamped it. And so I did. I brought it to the bank, and they certified that $50 check. So I got the check back, and then I wrote in between the lines, 1,000, and then I added the zeros to it, and now I had a $50,000 certified check. And then the rest is history on that deal.
Larry was a deal man. He would put deals together. He put people together. He knew how to motivate people.
He was a very good talker. He could sell ice cubes to an Eskimo. Absolutely no doubt about it.
He just was he knew how to make things work.
Without a doubt, my dad by far is the best salesman I've ever met in my life. Some kind of combination between his personality and how he sold things and got people to like him.
Out of nothing, he would generate and get something out of it. Whether it was smoke and mirrors, dog and pony show, he would put it together.
It's probably not something you could be taught. It's just something he does naturally. And I've actually, over the years, been a little jealous of not having that trait because I'm not quite a people person, but, you know, he is, and he's sharp and he's quick, and, you know, he's just the best salesperson I've ever been around, honestly.
A.L. Williamson just became a super duper firm. Don wanted to bring in another partner into the firm, John Patton. And I never liked this guy at all. And she just thought he was hot shit. He had a big book. You know, he had power he could sell, but I never got along with him. Well, what happened was they went behind my back to one of my biggest clients to get some money from him, Richard Lyle Cannon. Big guy, nice guy. He drove a Rolls Royce, and I drove a Bentley at the time. And we would always talk cars. And he was a cool guy, and he had invested money with me, a lot of money. But Don Messenger and Patton went behind my back to get some money out of Cannon, so it pissed me off. And I told them they got to buy me out. And I had to bring Big John into it to make sure that they made the payments. And they did. They bought me out. And so what I did is I went and I started DLB Financial, the original company, all over again until I could find my own company again. And it just so happened that while I was at DLB, I got another phone call. I'm always getting phone calls. I got a phone call from Dwyer Wedvik. But Dwyer was a top salesman. Dwyer wanted to come to work for me. I told him I'm looking for a firm. And I said, man, yeah, come on over. He said, but I think Peter will kill me if I leave. I said, he's not going to kill anybody. Don't worry about him. So anyway, Dwyer did. Dwyer came over and came to work for me. Well, Peter went nuts. He started calling my office, threatening my sister, threatening me. He's going to come over. He's going to send guys. He's going to kill everybody in the office. So I got fed up with it. I called Big John and John Tobin. We're going to go and see Peter. Well, John Tobin is he's one of those quiet guys, the kind of guy that you got to really watch out for. In Vietnam, and killed a lot of people over there, and probably killed a lot of people over here. Just stone cold. He was stone cold. And so I sent John Tobin and Big John to go threaten Peter to knock this bullshit off. And so when they got there, Peter said, yeah, hold on a minute. And he made a phone call, and he had this guy, Johnny Fats. Johnny Fats come to the office. And Johnny Fats comes there and he says, who the fuck do you think you guys are? You better be on Mulberry Street tomorrow, and you better have some fucking answers. And you better bring somebody that blah, blah, blah. So, you know who I am? I'm with the fucking Chin.
Vinny the Chin Gigante. He's said to be one of the most powerful mobsters in America.
So this is what Johnny Fats tells Big John and John Tobin. So they leave. Now they got this sit down the next day on Mulberry Street. Well, Big John, he's a connected guy. He knows that name. And he says, oh shit, we're fucked. That guy's the boss.
This fellow made quite the insinuation that he was with wise guys.
So Big John comes back. He comes and sees me. He tells me what happened. He says, I got to go down to Newark. I got to find somebody that can represent us. So the very next day, me, John Tobin, and Big John get in the car and we drive into New York. But Tobin wanted to blow the whole fucking block up. That's what a badass he was. And we talked him out of that. But anyway, they went there and I waited around the corner. They meet this guy, Johnny Fats, and a couple of his buddies there. And they decided that I should pay $30,000 for taking Dwyer from Pete. And so Big John and John, they agreed to that because they figured, well, 30,000 is an easy solution rather than, going to war. So that's what we did. And Dwyer got to stay with me. Pete got 30 grand, and no more phone calls. And it was shortly after that I found a brokerage firm out of Philadelphia, Royer Securities. And Don Messenger calls me up one day. He says, "Hey, listen, I got an offer for you. What do you think about buying A.O. Williamson back from me?" I said, "No, I don't think so. I've got Royer Securities." He said, "Well, what if I just sell you my sales force, and you can have the offices?" I said, "Well, what do you want me to do for you?" He said, "I got this big position. I can't unload it, and we're going to wind up, if we don't sell it, we're going to wind up going out of business anyway." I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So that's what happened. So Royer Securities moved back into the original A.O. Williamson offices. So it was like a whole full circle for me. My original couch that I had made was still there. My desk that I had made for myself was still there. Everything was there, including the sales guys that I trained. So it was like, the only thing that changed was I put the name on the door and I got rid of Don. And that was it. So Royer Securities was in business. One day I'm in my office and this guy walks in and he said, "I just want to let you know you owe me some money." I said, "I owe you some money? How do I owe you any money? I don't even know you." He said, "Well, now you know me. My name is Big Jim and I'm Johnny Formacola's friend. And you guys owe me money out of that Buckman deal that you guys did. And I want my fucking money or some bad things are going to happen to you." I said, "Listen, man, I don't know who you are or what you are, but I don't owe you any money." He said, "You're going to pay me and I'm going to be back to see you. And when I come back, you better have my money." And he leaves. So I took this guy serious. So I called Big John. So John said, okay, my man. He said, I'll pick you up tomorrow. We'll go for a ride. So John came and got me, and we went to back to Orange, New Jersey. And we went to a dry cleaner's. I go into the back room there, and there's this guy there. And, you know, you look at this guy, and he was the epitome of what a wise guy is supposed to look like. Well, this guy, man, he had red hair, blazing red hair, and potholes all over his faces. But he was a little guy, you know, not a big guy. He was a little guy. And she said to John, he said, John, I told you, I'll never bring these fucking legitimate guys around me. But then he said to me, okay, kid, what's your problem? And I said, well, there's this guy. His name is Big Jim. I said, he's threatening me. He's telling me I owe $20,000. He said, well, do you owe it to him? I said, no, I don't know. I don't even know the guy. And well, what makes you think he owes you the money? I said, well, you know, he came to my office. He said my partner owed it to him from a deal that we did. And since it was my partner, I'm responsible for the money. I said, I get it. He comes back to your office. This is what you say to him. He said, you tell him to go fuck himself, and you tell him Red said so. That's it. Now get the fuck out of here. John says to me, man, you know what just happened? I said, yeah. He told me to tell this big motherfucker to go fuck himself. That's what happened. He said, no. He gave you permission to use his name. No one mentions names ever. Sure as shit, about 3 or 4 days later, this guy, Big Jim, comes back to my office. And he comes in, he said, you got my fucking money? I said, no, but I got a message for you. He said, yeah, what's the message? I said, go fuck yourself. And Red said to tell you that. Now get the fuck out of my office. Big Jim left and he did his homework and he went and found out who the fuck Red was. And found out that I was with Red. So now I'm with Red. I didn't know I'm with Red. He finds out I'm with Red. And I never heard from this motherfucker ever again.
That eventually, I think, got Larry to where he got involved with the organized crime aspect. And once he had that juice behind him, he was unstoppable. A lot of people wanted to get next to Larry, including organized crime.
I'm sitting in my office one day and Big John comes to the office and he said, hey, man, you got to come outside with me. Somebody wants to talk to you. I said, John, man, it's right in the middle of my trading day. I can't leave and just go outside with you right now. Come on, man. He said, no, you got to go outside right now. I said, John, I'm not fucking going outside, man. Knock it off. I can't. I'm busy. He said, listen, my man, you got to go outside. There's somebody out there you got to go fucking talk to, so you got to come right now. I said, all right, John. I get up. I fucking push myself backward from my chair, and I get up and I slam open the fucking door like I'm really pissed off. And I go out there, and I like to say this, it's like Jackie Gleason, man. I did a humana. I see fucking Red standing there. I haven't seen the guy in a year. And here he is standing in front of my firm. So Red says, come on, take a walk with me. And he locks arms with me. And we start walking down the shopping center, down the sidewalk in front of all the stores. And he said to me, he said, you know, you've been doing good business. You got a lot of money. People are watching you. You know, somebody's going to latch onto you. But I want to be your partner. And with me, you're going to have more money. You're going to have power. You're going to own the fucking street. Here's Red talking about the fucking street, like street terms. Like, what the heck is, what's going on? He said, I want you to be my partner. Think about it. And with that, he didn't say no more. He just turned around, we walked back, he got in his car, and I went back in. Think about it, I said to myself. What am I gonna fucking think about? There's nothing to think about. Wall Street, the Mafia. What's to think about? I'm in.
That where a guy like Red Cesare, who was a made man, not only wanted the money at first, but then he started liking Larry.
What not to say, what to do, what not to do. And he said to, you know, I want you to stay legitimate. I don't want you to get in any trouble. You know, this is what we need you for. You know, we need what you're doing. I said, yeah, man, I'm trying to stay legitimate.
I don't know how far he would have went with the mob or without the mob. I really don't know.
I had a promoter come to me and he had all this stock. And he wanted me to push this stock out into the market for him, and I was gonna get a big piece of it. So I was ready to do the deal, and the fucking guy died. I didn't kill him, he just fucking, he died. You know, it wasn't something that I planned, or anybody else for that matter. So I was stuck with all this stock. So I had this young kid that worked for me, and his name was Kenny, and I got all the stock certificates, and I gave them to Kenny, and I sent them to Connecticut to his grandfather's house. And I had him take his grandfather to Merrill Lynch and deposit all these shares into Merrill Lynch. And then I had him sell all those shares. Well, the only market maker, the only brokerage firm that was making a market in those shares was my firm. I knew that if we got the phone call from Merrill Lynch, we were going to buy every single share at the total bid price. We bought all those shares at like $3 a share. Came out to, like, I don't know, like $450,000. I didn't want to take the money out of the firm and just put it in my pocket. So this was a way for me to get cash without showing it. And then they gave Kenny's grandfather a check, and then I instructed Kenny to tell them they got to cash the check. Reluctantly, they did, but they had to order the money. They didn't have that much money. So they ordered the money. The next day, the money came. Kenny got all the money, put it in a suitcase, and brought it all back to me. I gave Kenny $50,000, and he was happy as could be, and I had all the cash. But now I had one more thing besides the cash. I had all the stock back again.
We were in West Cornwall at Royer. I'm pretty sure I was there. He pulled up in a limousine out of nowhere. He must have knew Larry's name on the street, that he was a mover and a shaker. And I think he was from California, David Wellington.
He's got a deal called Dataforce, and he wants me to be the main market maker in Dataforce. I told Wellington, I said, listen, man, I like your deal, but, this bullshit little petty stock that you want to give me isn't going to do it. You got all this stock, you got to come up with more stock. I got Wellington to give me 10 million shares. The coolest part of this stock was that it was in bearer name. What that means is there's no name on the stock certificate as to who the owner is. So whoever bears that stock certificate is the owner. And that's unheard of. No stock is ever in bearer form. It's always in someone's name. So basically, I could just take those stock certificates and just hand them out to anyone. And it was cool. And how Wellington got away with that is because the shares landed offshore. They were from Costa Rica. So that's how we got around the SEC in bearer form. Anyway, so I got him to give me the 10 million shares. And naturally, I get a couple million shares to Red, and he passed them all along to whoever he had to pass them along to. We were trading this Dataforce like crazy. And my brokerage firm at the time, I think I had about 30 to 50 million bucks in my trading account. And with the 10 million shares of Dataforce added to it, we were pretty healthy. So I got on a plane, I was going out to Utah, and I told Dwyer, I said, listen, Dwyer, whatever David Wellington wants, do it for him. When I land, the first thing I do is I call the office, and I get Dwyer on the phone and say, hey, what's going on? Man, we were busy today. I said, really, what'd you do? He said, oh man, we bought a ton of Dataforce. I said, Dwyer, how much did you buy? He said, I don't know, but I think we're out of capital. I said, Dwyer, are you crazy? What did you do that for? Well, you told me to do that. I said, Dwyer, use your common sense, man. You don't fucking buy all that fucking stock. I turn around, get the next plane back. So I called Pete Gattini. I said, hey, man, where's David? Because Gattini was the trader at Oppenheimer. I said, where's David? I don't know. I can't get a hold of him. I said, did you sell my guy all that fucking stock? He said, man, Larry, fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are, man? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. What are you going to do with it? I said, listen, Pete, why don't you meet me, in West Orange? I got something for you. So I guess I piqued his interest when I said that, and him and his tough guy attitude, tough guy telephone guy. I land, Dwyer picks me up in my limousine with John Tobin. I said, man, we gotta go to West Orange. I gotta go see this guy, Pete Gattini. I'm gonna fuck this motherfucker up. And I said, Dwyer, where do we stand? He said, I think if we can get out of all the stock, we might break even and just come out zero. I said, what do you mean zero? We don't owe any money and we still got all our money? No, we lose all our money, but we don't owe any money. In one fucking day, Dwyer Woodford lost all the money in my trading account at Royer Securities. And the only good news about it is that we didn't owe any money. So we put Catini and his friends in the hospital. And that's where it needed to be. Fuck them.
You know, but I'm gonna tell you right now, Larry, we never took shit from anybody. Never.
I had a meeting with Red, and he said, you know, there's this guy that thinks he's clever, and he's a stock market guy, and he owed Jip DiCarlo a lot of money. And he claims that he was with Jip the night Jip died, that he paid Jip off. And the only two people that could possibly know whether or not he paid Jip off was Jip and him.
Told him I paid the guy. I never paid the guy.
So Red said, I want you to get friendly with this guy. He's a stock guy. Find out what you can find out about him, and maybe we can get some money back out of this guy. I said, sure, what's the guy's name? He said, well, they call him George the Greek. George the Greek, I don't know, Liveratus or something like that. He's from Orange. I said, all right, I'll find out what I can find out. So I was broke with Royer. I mean, I lost all my money, but I kept my house, my mansion on the mountain, and I kept my Rolls Royce. I kept my limousine. And from all appearances, it looked like I still had a ton of money. But basically, I sold all my furniture, sold my grand piano, sold everything that was in the house just to keep surviving. Eating off cardboard boxes, for Christ's sakes, as tables. But, you know, I never let anybody know that I was broke.
When Larry real, you know, when he had money, he had money. We didn't have money, he didn't have money. he knew how to flow checks though. He'd float a check, give me a check, I'll cover it. Boom, he would cover it. Somehow he'd cover it. He'd put it in the bank, he'd pay the rent, pay the phone, the light stayed on. Nothing ever got turned off, and we never got evicted. He knew how to float the money.
I get a phone call from my SEC attorney, Morty Berger. He wants me to come to New York to do a deal in Fair Pharmaceuticals. So I'm broke, I needed the money, and I figured, well, let me go check this out. Maybe I can maneuver something here. So I drove my Rolls Royce there, had my best suit on, and I go to this deal. And Michael Gardner was a promoter. I knew him pretty good. I wanted to get into this deal. I liked the deal. It had a lot of sizzle. And I always tell people, you sell the sizzle, you don't sell the steak. So I said, I'll contribute $10,000 to the deal, and I'll raise another $100,000. Well, you know, everybody welcomed me with open arms, but I'll be damned if I knew where I was going to get the fucking $10,000 from. We talked about getting public companies, and Don Shepard says, I know a guy that has some public companies for sale. I said, well, where is he? He said, he's in Orange, New Jersey. I said, Orange? What's the guy's name? He said, they call him George the Greek. I said, what do they call him? He said, George the Greek. I said, set up that meeting, man. Let's go see him. So it was like, I couldn't believe it. Here Red is telling me to get involved with this guy, go find out about him. And it's the same fucking guy that Don Shepard is saying, let's go meet. On Main Street in Orange is where his office was. And we go into this office, it was a real estate office. Some dingy place, man. So George comes out and he's got this pinstripe suit on, wide lapels, wide pinstripe, and a big ass white hat on his head. He looked like a gangster that stepped out of the 1940s, like a Humphrey Bogart kind of imitator, but worse. And he's telling us about his public company, and he wants to know what we're putting in it. And I said, listen, George, doesn't matter what we're gonna put in it. We just want your company. We're gonna buy your company from you. He said, oh, no, you can't buy it. I'll give it to you, but you're gonna be my partner. I've been looking for a guy like you my whole life. I said, George, I don't have partners. Oh, no, I'm gonna be your partner. So I said, George, let us talk for a little while. So I had George step out of the room and we talked. I said, listen, let's just bring this yokel in the deal. Let him think he's gonna be a somebody in it, and we'll get this public company for free. We won't have to pay for it. And that's part of my deal to get into this deal. You got the public company for free, and it's because of me. I'm bringing it to the table. And I reported back to Red. I told Red, well, I got George, and we got a public company from him, and we're going to make some money off of it. So Red said, yeah, keep him close to you, keep him close to you. I said, he wants to be my partner. And well, don't let him be your partner, but you just keep him close to you. I said, all right, I will. George called me and he said, I got a guy that came to me. He's got this nightclub in Whippany, New Jersey, and they need to get rid of it. And you can have it for free. I said, what do you mean I can have it for free? Well, you know, just to make it legal, you know, give them like a few bucks or something. But yeah, they just want to screw the owner of the property. They've got a lease there, and the owner is trying to kick them out. I said, yeah, okay, let's go. So I called Morty Berger, my lawyer, and I said, man, I need a lawyer in Jersey, or a regular lawyer. He said, well, I know a guy, Jay Surgeon. And I said, well, set up an appointment. I need to go see him right away.
We were interested in buying this club and naming it Chapter 11 because it was going through a Chapter 11. So that's why you named it Chapter 11. And that nightclub became a very, very popular nightclub.
There was never any problems, but the place was just a madhouse. We had people lined up a mile up the road trying to get in on rainy nights, not even on good nights. We had to stop people from coming in. And it was probably one of the most famous nightclubs in New Jersey in 1980 and 81. Everybody from everywhere came to that club.
But I think that you were being closely watched by the feds even at that time.
By this time now, a lot of these wise guys wanted to get on the action. They saw what was happening. They knew what I was doing. You know, word travels around, and, you know, everybody wanted to get in on the action. So they were starting to copy a lot of the stuff that I would do. And they were bringing in guys to be something like me, but not me. So I was there before these guys. So people are going to come to me first. And if somebody wanted to do a deal, they better come to me first, or they'd be in trouble. So it didn't matter who they were with. It just didn't matter. My guys were the fucking baddest motherfuckers going. There was nobody badder than my guys.
Well, I feel as though that he used a lot of his potential, but I also believe that a lot of people used him.
So right next to the nightclub, there was a Howard Johnson's, and I used to keep a hotel room there. And I was there one night with my girlfriend, and early in the morning, like 7 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings in the hotel room. And I answer the phone, and it's Red. He said, I'm over here. I'm at the club. Come over here right now. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck did I do now? What's up? 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's at the club. So I get up and I rush over to the club, and I walk in, and Red's there with this other guy, dark black hair, big bulky guy. And he says to Red, so this is the guy, huh? With this deep, deep voice. And I just knew right away who this guy was. And Red said, yeah, he's the guy. And Joe the Indian, says, he's the guy that's gonna make us all these millions and millions of dollars. And Red said, yeah, he's the guy, he's gonna do it. Yeah, well, we'll see about that. Let's go. So Red said, let's go, we're going for a ride. I'm thinking to myself, oh no. So we walk outside, we get into the parking lot, and Red throws me the keys to his car, and he said, you drive. I was so relieved that I was not getting in the passenger seat with Joe the Indian sitting behind me. I just a whole feeling of relief came over me. So I said to Red, where are we going? He said, we're going to New York. I said, oh, what's in New York? He said, that jerk off that owes you $450,000. And the chin said, go fucking choke him. When I first met Red, one of the first things he asked me was, is there anyone that owes you any money? And I said to him, yeah, there's this one guy. He owes me $450,000, but we can't do anything about it. He said, what do you mean we can't? Why can't we do anything about it? I said, well, Red, he's with the chin. And, you know, we can't do that. Red said, well, where did you hear that name from? How do you know that name? And so I told Red this whole story about the sit-down on Mulberry Street with Johnny Fats and John Tobin and Big John. And Red just looked at me and he said, okay. And anybody else owe you any money? I said, no, that's it. Nobody else. He said, all right. And I never heard another word from Red about that. And but let me just tell you one thing. Wise guys have a long, long memory. They don't forget anything. So we get to Pete's office, and his secretary, Barbara, I said, we're here to see Peter. She said, hold on, let me go get him. Well, Peter comes out and he sees these two guys. He said, you know, hey man, what's up? What do you need? And they said, we need you. And Peter said, all right, come to my office. So we go into his office, and Red said to Pete, so you think you're a tough guy, huh? You like threatening people, calling up their offices, saying you're gonna kill them, you're gonna shoot them. You're a real tough guy, huh? What about if I throw you right out that fucking window right now? And Pete said, wait a second, you got this all wrong. That's all been settled. And Joe said, yeah, we know it's fucking settled. Get that motherfucker Johnny Fats on the phone, get him on the phone right now. So Pete was smoking Pall Mall cigarettes at the time. He was smoking one cigarette after another. I mean, I thought he was gonna burn his fingers. Non-filters. I mean, he smoked them right down to his fingertips, trying to get Johnny Fats on the telephone. So he finally gets Johnny Fats on the phone. Johnny Fats comes over and he starts yelling out before he's even through the doorway, Pete, what the fuck did you get me into now? And Red says, shut the fuck up. Who the fuck are you? You better get somebody on the phone. And you better do it right now. So there was a restaurant downstairs, a little diner. So we all go into the elevator, and Fats starts up again with his big fucking mouth, and he says, what the fuck did you do to me? And fucking Red smacks him right in the fucking face. Shut the fuck up, you piece of shit. So anyway, Fats is on that fucking telephone, trying to dial people, trying to call people up, trying to get somebody to come there and represent him. Finally, a couple guys come in, and Joe chimes in and says, listen, guys, you don't even have the stripes to be talking to us. You better get somebody here that can talk to us. So they go to the phone booth and they start making calls. And they got their boss, who was out in Long Island at the time, and he said he'll be right there. So in comes the boss. He says, what's going on? And so they tell him the whole story. And then Red says, and this jerk off over here, he said he's with the chin. And the boss just looks at him and said, oh, so you know the chin, huh? And Johnny Fats said, well, I didn't say I knew him. I just said that, don't you ever fucking mention that name ever again. I'll chop your fucking head off. We get down to the nuts and bolts of it all. And you mention that name, now you're responsible for the money. And you're going to make sure he pays that money. Joe said to me, is there anything else you want to do with this piece of shit, this scumbag? And I said, well, as long as Fats is responsible and we're going to get the money. Red said, okay, let's do it. It's done. And that was the end of that.
He was the king of penny stocks. You know, he was just good at it. And people wanted in.
Finally got to me, and he talked me into doing a deal. He had a public company called Worldwide Ventures.
So I worked with you for months until you said, okay, I'll do it. And then we made America the hardest penny stock in the country.
And George wanted me to take over Worldwide Ventures and be the president of Worldwide Ventures, and he was going to be the chairman of the board. And that was okay with me. He could have that title. Didn't bother me at all.
Of course, George Zavaratis, who was Larry's partner, if you will. Larry was the brains, of course, and he led George a bit, I think. And George relished in that because he had the opportunity to be the boss, but not actually be the boss or give orders, but they were Larry's orders. He was like the second in command.
Indian Mountain Lakes was the first deal that went into Worldwide Ventures, and we made that announcement. So the stock was trading at a penny when we made that announcement, and we took it up to 10 cents based on that announcement, and we just started selling stock. Well, Don Shepard, the guy that introduced me to George, he had this guy, Amos Walls, out in Indiana, and Amos had this device called the Safety Scape. And it was cool as shit. So it was this little box. So if you're stuck in a high-rise building, and this device had a braking device inside of it, built inside of it, and then the braking device kicks in, and then it just slowly lets you down and lowers you to the ground. So it just seemed like everything was happening all at one time. So during this, at the exact same time, we fall into another deal in the Poconos, and it's a gambling deal. Well, they didn't have gambling in the Poconos at the time. They only had gambling in Atlantic City and in Las Vegas. But we decided that we could make this into a gambling deal, and we're going to tell everybody that legislation is going to get passed and they're going to bring gambling to the Poconos. And we're going to bring Jilly Rizzo in, Frank Sinatra's partner and bodyguard and road manager, and Frank Sinatra into the deal.
The government was against it right from the get-go.
So we're gonna promote the shit out of this thing. And so we figured the way we would do it, we would hold a presentation in Denver at the Stapleton Hotel in Denver. And then we would do it in Las Vegas, the same thing. So Morty Berger, again, my attorney, he represents this girl, she wasn't Playgirl Bunny or whatever, some other nudie magazine. Anyway, so we get her, and she's going to jump off the building with this safety skate. So we all go out to Denver. We had this big press conference with Jilly there, and me and George, and just everybody was there. And I invited brokers from all over the country. And so the deal was to have this girl jump, and I think she jumped from like the 20th floor of the Stapleton Hotel. So she jumps, and me and Jilly are on the bottom there looking up as she's coming down. And as I said, it lets you down fast. It's supposed to let you down fast the first, few feet or whatever. Well, she jumps, doesn't hold on to the straps, turns upside down, bounces off of the balcony underneath her, boom, bounces again, boom, off the next balcony, again off the next one down there. And Jilly's saying, we're gonna have to catch her, we're gonna have to catch her. And I'm thinking, millions of dollars just went right down the drain. This thing isn't gonna work, and we're gonna be destroyed. And then all of a sudden, boom, it snaps, and she doesn't fall. She comes down so slow, and right into Jilly's arms. And it was a smash. So the whole thing was, maybe she got some bumps and bruises coming down, but she came down safely and she survived. If there was a fire, she got out alive, unhurt. So everybody went crazy. The stock went to $3 a share from 10 cents.
The stock was going 30 times up and 30 times down. People were buying for down, up and down. We had American Express being market maker. They never did that for penny stocks.
We were selling stock. We couldn't make enough stock to sell it all. So then we go out to Las Vegas. And I got all the brokers out in Las Vegas. And if the brokers committed to buy 50,000 shares, I would give them 10,000 shares. And that was kind of the way we were doing it. Our stock we never looked back. We took that stock from a penny to $9 a share. No one did better than we did. We sold 55 million shares at $9 a share. We sold every share.
It became the hardest stock in the history of penny stocks.
In the world.
A penny for your thoughts when they're worth the weight in gold.
We stayed at a place called the L'Armitage. The L'Armitage was an exclusive hotel. For a guy that had nothing, me, and living being in Beverly Hills, it was a pretty cool experience, to say the least.
At that point in time, and most assuredly, probably had a net worth of $80-some million.
We were spending $30,000 a week just to live there. I would stay in and I would be working the stock because I had to be up early in the morning for when the market opened. And I would send George out at nighttime to go party with everybody.
We get $500,000 every other day from the brokerage firm.
I mean, we had everybody partying with us from Clint Eastwood, Brooke Shields, James Caan. I mean, you name the person and they were Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise. I mean, all these people were part of our circle. And they all wanted to be part of this deal.
Clint Eastwood gave me 50% of his estate in Carmel, for stock. Yeah.
Everybody knew about it. Everybody wanted to rub shoulders with us. Everybody wanted to be a part of it because Sinatra was a part of it. And that's all people wanted to know. Sinatra was in, they want to be in. Jilly's in, they want to be in. And then they wanted to know, who's the guy that never comes out? Who's George's partner that everybody talks about, the big money guy? And so the more I stayed in, the more famous I became. We had this meeting in Los Angeles, these big tobacco people. And we leave, and I said to George, man, that meeting went really good. Yeah, they really liked us. So later on, a guy comes to us and they said, well, these guys really aren't interested in doing any business with you guys. I said, what? Why is that? They said, because you guys just look silly, man. You had all this gold jewelry dripping off of you, and, nobody wants to, these guys are old money, man. You guys are too flashy. Well, that was it. I took all that freaking jewelry off, and I got home, I gave it all to Ricky. I said, here, you can have it all. I don't want it. And I never wore that shit again, all those gold nugget rings and bracelets and gold nugget watches. And old money stays with old money. New money spends fast. And that's what happened. So basically, there was a lot of Johnny-come-latelys. You know, I was the guy that introduced wise guys, organized crime into the penny stock market. So before me, there was nobody.
What's important to know is that, like, you know, before the term pump and dump, before all this, I mean, you know, it was him and those guys of that time period that really created the playbook for all kinds of guys like Wolf of Wall Street and all these people that came later. But it was definitely him. He was the first, for sure.
All I wanted to do was go on my honeymoon. I went to Jamaica. I got to Jamaica, woke up the next day and the phone's ringing in the bungalow. I get a phone call. You need to come back. What do you mean I gotta come back? What are you talking about? Joe wants you here right now. Oh, fuck, you know, the boss calls, you go. You can't argue about it. You just gotta go. Red had a stroke. And he was my guy. I mean, we were close. He was like a father to me. I mean, he schooled me. He taught me everything. He spent hours and hours and hours talking to me and really took me under his wing. He wanted me to be a somebody. And he was never, ever going to let anything happen to me. And I knew that, you know, and I knew he loved me and I loved him. He was a great, great guy. He was a vicious guy. If you did him wrong, there was no place you could hide. But, you know, if he liked you, you were in. And me and Red were tight. And it broke my heart when he died. He died while I was away, but when he had the stroke, he might as well have been dead. Everything I was doing was to Joe instead of Red now. And I had to do whatever Joe said. And I sometimes had the feeling that Joe didn't really like me very much.
A dangerous way.
So my honeymoon was ruined. I get back, and what's the problem? The fucking Greek, that's the problem. You gotta control this motherfucker. He's spending money like you just turn on a water faucet and it comes out, and we're not seeing a taste of it. You know, we're ready to whack this motherfucker. What's going on with him?
He said we're spending too much money. Like sailors, we should stop doing that.
I said, it's okay, I'll talk to him. I'll slow down some of this spending. Oh, it's kind of true. George was spending a lot of money. But you know what? George was making a lot of money. You know, he was out partying with all these people. It takes money to make money, and George knew that.
I remember I had one, I paid $500,000, a ring. Yeah, that's the one I lost. He saw my hand on the street, and I was too late to pick it up, and I left. I didn't give a fuck.
So he was doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing, but these guys didn't quite understand all of that. You know, it's a different world for them. So part of my job was to kind of be the buffer between their world and this other world, and to try to make them understand it.
That's how I am, even now. I don't give a fuck about money. I want it, but I don't give a fuck.
They were gonna whack George. There wasn't a doubt in my mind. And I said, I'm done, George. We're getting out of this worldwide shit, and it's over. I'm done. I don't need it. I don't want it. And you know, I was pretty healthy financially, so I really didn't care. So I went my own way. I made a little office in my house. One of the deals that came to me, these two guys from Florida, Michael Rapp was his name. Man, Michael Rapp was a rat, and so that was his fake name. So I introduced Michael Rapp and Lionel Reifler to the president of Federal Flushing Savings and Loan. Carl Kardashian was the president's name. And I went into his office and I took a piece of paper and I wrote down on a piece of paper, we will give you $500,000 if you give us a $5 million loan. And I said, just shake your head, yes or no. That's what I said to him. And he shook his head, yes. So Michael Rapp and Lionel Reifler would be moving millions and millions of dollars into Federal Flushing Savings and Loan. So I don't know, they took out, I don't know, maybe 30 million bucks, somewhere around there, and never paid it back. It was a bad deal, and because of that, there was a lot of attention that was brought, you know, to me and to the bank. The bank got shut down, and Michael Rapp was Davey Iacovitti's guy, his go-to guy for money, and Joe couldn't understand what Davey Iacovitti was doing with this Rapp motherfucker, and what the fuck is going on? Nobody, you don't do that shit. And so we had a big sit down with Davey and Lionel and a couple other guys in New York, me, and George was there, but they threw George out and they wouldn't let Michael Rapp in the building. So we go in and we have this big sit down about all this money that was coming out of federal flushing, who's gonna pay it all back, what's gonna happen, let's just end this whole thing, let's take all this property, let's give it back to Jilly, he gives us back all our stock, and we wash our hands and everybody walks their own way. Which was okay with me, because by now, I was fed up with all this shit and fed up with all these guys. Laser Arms, we were doing great. Danny Benedetto had a nephew who was the manager of a bank in Edison, New Jersey, and we would take these checks to him. We would call him ahead of time, and he would order the money. And it would be anywhere from 100,000, maybe to 300,000, sometimes 500,000. And we would go there with these checks, and Marshall and I would walk out of the bank literally with these big green garbage bags, like Santa Claus, except they were green bags over our shoulder, full of cash. And we would do that on a weekly basis. And so what happened was the SEC stopped trading on laser arms. They knew something was up. The FBI was in on it. And so they halted trading. So they froze all the money that we had, and they knew where it all was, and we just couldn't figure it out. No matter what step we took, it seemed like somebody was always there ahead of us. So we got the bright idea, fuck it. They said the tail can didn't exist, it didn't work. So I went to Amos Walls, and he was the guy that did the safety scape, where the girl jumped out of the, and I said, Amos, I have a problem, man. You gotta do this for me. We are gonna put on a demonstration in the World Trade Center, on windows of the world, at the top of the World Trade Center, and we need a can, and we need to pop that can that's got a fucking chill in your hand. He said, I got it. I know what to do. I said, it's gotta fucking get cold, Amos. He said, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. I mean, this guy was an inventor, and if anybody could do it, he could do it. So now we need somebody to become the president of Laser Arms, because everybody that Marshall had, they were all fake people. They were pictures that he cut out of magazines. So we said, who's gonna be stupid enough? We know the FBI is gonna be there. Who in the world would be crazy enough to want to be president of this company now and do this demonstration in the World Trade Center? I said, I got the guy. So I called George Liveratis, George the Greek. I said, George, I got 10 grand for you right now in cash. This is what you got to do. We're going to make you the new president of Laser Arms. You're going to go to the World Trade Center, windows of the world. You're going to put on a demonstration. You're going to pop that fucking can. It's going to freeze in your hand. You're going to tell everybody to touch it. And you're going to prove to everybody that this can works. I'm in. You got the money? Yeah, George, here it is. I gave George $10,000, and we put on this big press conference. You got the film for it.
You'd be 6 months to get ready to start. Then that'd only be a limited amount, but you'd have all the tooling worked out, then you could duplicate it to increase production.
There have been attempts before to try and do this, and they've proven to be just too expensive.
I haven't attempted it. I can do it. I wouldn't say I could do it, but I couldn't.
It makes no difference. As long when we are ready, even if they don't use your muscle, they have 400 million cans a day they're making this country.
So we put on this big press conference. Me and Marshall, we were in, Marshall bought a brand new Eldorado, and we were in this Eldorado in the parking lot downstairs. And we had Tommy Quinn, who worked for me, who was my right-hand guy. He was on a payphone with me on the phone and Marshall's car, telling me what was going on.
It's like a poker game, you know?
Are you going to be in touch with our investors in a very short period of time?
Yeah, Mr. Berger, because of his trips to Florida, you know, we didn't have a peace of mind because he's handling this case in court.
And he's saying, it looks like there's FBI. It looks like there's FBI everywhere, and there's newspapers everywhere. But man, George is really putting on a good show.
Is this can the same one that appeared in the Wall Street Journal ad?
I don't know. Most of the cans don't look the same. Like you saw from our other inventor, it's the same can,
and the same thing. So, but they look the same. It's not the same.
It's not the same?
It's normal.
It's not the same can as the one, the diagram that appeared in the Wall Street Journal?
No, I don't know.
And so, George, the whole climax, George says, and now I'm going to pop this can. So Amos made these cans and he filled them with Freon.
And it's a very simple principle. You take gas, allow it to expand, takes the heat out. Use an inert gas like CO2, which is harmful to the atmosphere, harmless for the atmosphere or breathing or anything. It's a very simple process.
And I don't know if you've ever seen anybody put Freon into an air conditioner on a car. The outside of it gets real frosty and cold, then it leaks. So that's what Elvis did. He filled these cans up with Freon, and when George popped that damn thing, it was like froze right through his hand. I mean, it was that cold. And he said, see, it works. And that was the deal. And stock never traded again.
No, obviously the stock is not trading. It has not traded since the SEC stopped it from trading.
They said it was a scam. George said these are all. George called the FBI every name he could think of calling them. He said the SEC was a bunch of idiots. They're just after him because he's the biggest promoter in the world. Nobody's better than him. He's George Liveratis. He's the greatest. He's the best stock guy in the world. And this is what he's telling all the newspapers. And they were all soaking it all up. And yeah, man, it was crazy. And me and Marshall were down in the car just listening to all this shit. And we're laughing our asses off. And that was the chill can.
This is their can, but there's no danger of this. No. Okay. There's no danger to them. We'll get general. There's no danger to the can. Right. Okay.
I wanted to get back into the music business. That's been my passion my whole life. Freddie Hines, who was president of Polydor, and Kuhn Suhlenfeld, who was the chairman of the board of Polygram, became friends of mine. So I came up with an idea. I'm going to do 21 Entertainment Group, and I'm going to take the stock from a penny to 21 bucks. And I'm going to make Freddie Hines my partner in the stock deal. And everybody wanted in on the deal, and I didn't want anyone in on the deal. I just wanted it to be me and Freddie. So I talked to Kuhn Suhlenfeld. He said, I have a deal for you, but you got to have a lot of cash. I said, well, what's the deal? He said, I think you can get RCA Records. I said, yeah, I don't think I have that. I got a lot of money, but I don't think I got that much money. He said, I think you can pull it off. I had to come up with $55 million in cash. That was the number. And put it down as a non-refundable deposit. So I was going to pledge their assets plus my cash, and that would give me enough money to buy them out. So by doing that, I would become the president of RCA and pretty much untouchable. I would be the most legitimate, connected guy in the country. They couldn't let me get to the RCA deal. So they arrested me on September 8th, 1986. And there was 19 of us that got arrested. And when they had us all down in federal court, Marshall Soap was standing to the left of me, and then the other 17 guys were to the right of me. But how I got arrested was a little strange. I was going to the probation office because I thought I had these tax charges and I had to do a pre-sentence report. And I used to wear a hairpiece back then. I got up in the morning, I said, fuck this, I'm going to probation. I'm not gonna put on a hairpiece, I'm not gonna do any of that shit. I got up and so I didn't have a hairpiece on. So when I walked in there and I walked past all these guys, it was the FBI. They didn't recognize me because I didn't have a hairpiece on. I started walking back down the hall because I was gonna look to see which floor the parole office was on, and I hear somebody say, Larry. And I turn around and it's an FBI agent. I said, fuck, I'm screwed. I know exactly what this is. He said, I finally got you, Larry. I said, you don't got shit, man. You don't have anything. He said, oh, no. I got you this time. I don't think so. He said, look at this. And he holds up a cassette tape. And he said, yeah, so what? What's that? That's nothing. He said, oh, that's something. That's you talking on this tape here. And it's your friends talking too. It's a big deal. You got one cassette tape. He said, oh, no. He said, I got this one, and I got 4,999 more of it with all your friends, all your buddies, all your wise guy friends, everybody talking on these tapes. My case was the first case in history where they ever got a wiretap case in the securities industry. It was unheard of. It was never done before. They can never tap phones in the security business because in order to get an order to tap a phone, they have to have no other evidence. There can't be any other evidence. And in securities cases, there's always a paper trail. So the way they got it was they had Paul lie and say I was running guns with Lenny Macaluso from Florida to New Jersey. And that's how they were able to get the wiretap. So Cahill tells me about all these cassette tapes that he's got on me and all my friends and all the wise guys. And I said, you know what, I want to call my lawyer. He said, who do you want to call? I said, I'm calling Morty Berger. He said, can't do that. We got him. I said, okay, I want to call Mark Bateman. Can't do that. We got him too. I said, I want to call Jay Surgeon. Can't do that. We got him too. I said, is there any of my fucking lawyers you don't got? Nope, we got them all. So, you know, they took me to Newark. And he said, we know you got a safe out in Long Island, the Zurich Depository. We know all about it. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck, man? How do they know all about this shit? The Zurich Depository was where all the elite, all the drug dealers, all the anybody's that had big money that they didn't want anybody to know about, they would deposit it all in the Zurich Depository in New York. And this place, when you get a safe in the Zurich Depository, you don't give your real name, you don't show any ID, no social security number, it's just all codes. And if you forget your code name or your code that you enter, you ain't never getting into that safe ever. And it was underground, it was bomb-proof. So it was like the place for people that were in the know to bring all their goodies. And so, of course, you know, I had one there and Marshall had one right next to me. We just used to joke about that. And of course, we talked about it over the phone as well. So that's how they found out about the Zurich Depository. I didn't give them my safe code name. And I didn't give them Marshall's safe code name because I didn't know Marshall's. If I did, I would have stolen it from him. But yeah, fuck him. We all get arrested and they take us to be arraigned. And there's 19 of us, starting here and going all the way. And I'm the second to the end. Marshall's on the end. And I'm just listening, you know, to the magistrate as, you know, $5,000 bill, $5,500 bill. And then I hear the U.S. attorney saying, you know, he's a danger to society. He threatened to kill a government witness. He was going to have a government witness killed. And I don't think he should be allowed out. I think his bail should be denied. And I said to Marshall, who the fuck are they talking about? He said, they're talking about you, stupid. And they were. And I said, what the fuck is that? I didn't fucking conspire to kill any government witness. And so what that was all about was they had my whole place wired, my office and everything. And one day Lenny came up to my office and Lenny said, man, you know, word on the street is he's ratting. He's going to start giving everybody up and they want to whack him. I said, man, that guy ain't giving anybody up, man. He's scared to death. He's never going to do it. And he said, no, I think they're going to whack him. And anyway, that was the whole conversation. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to whack him or anything like that. It was Lenny telling me that, you know, people are unfriendly towards this guy and they're thinking about killing him. And so maybe the only thing I did was I said to Dom, I said, listen, man, I'll deny it if you say I said it, but if I were you, I'd leave town like immediately, if not sooner. And I'm not going to tell you why, but you need to get out of town. And that's all I said to the guy. You need to get out of town. So they said I threatened him because I told them that over the phone. They twisted that whole conversation. I was just trying to help him. I didn't want to see him get killed. They held me without bail. And they held Marshall without bail. And so that day, Marshall and I went to MCC New York, riding on the same bus, shackled to each other. Here I was hating him, and he was afraid of me, wanting to get away as fast as he could. But he couldn't go nowhere. He was shackled right to me. And I'm thinking to myself, this motherfucker, I'm in jail over this bullshit. And it was all over the Laser Arms chill can deal. That's what they busted us over. Marshall Zope's deal. Not Worldwide Ventures, not any of the other deals that I did in 13 years. Just that deal. That's what they busted us on, the chill can. So I found myself on a bus with Marshall Zope headed to MCC New York. Really didn't know what to expect. Actually never really been in a jail before, never mind a federal jail. But we get there and actually there were some people there that we knew and Basically, I guess if you really think about it, pretty much any wise guy that was a wise guy was in jail back then. They had the Gotti trial going on. They had the commission trial going on. They had the Pizza Connection trial going on.
The second mob hit on the defendant in the Pizza Connection trial is raising fears of a gang war.
So all these wise guys, in '86, were all in jail. So we were all in jail together. We all knew each other. And, when I got there, the first thing that happened was I walked in and somebody came and gave me a carton of cigarettes. And, it was okay. It was better than what I thought it would be. Any minute I kept looking at the door to see if they were going to bring Joe and Lenny through the door. So I started wondering, was Cahill lying to me? He said everybody was arrested, but I never saw those guys. And then I started thinking, well, maybe they're on a different floor. So I finally got a call out. I got a call to Robin, my wife at the time. She told me they raided the house. They searched the whole house. They took everything. And they raided the office. They took everything out of the office, all the computers. My lawyers were all fucking arrested. Man, we were going through money. It was like crazy. I think I spent probably maybe $250,000 on an attorney. All the money that I was making with Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 back then was all legitimate money, so they couldn't touch that money. But every penny of it was going towards paying legal fees. So it kind of sucked. The wise guys ran for the hills because they didn't know what to expect either. They didn't get arrested, but they just didn't know what to do. They didn't know what was going to go on. They didn't know if I was going to rat. They didn't know if I was going to be a stand-up guy. Nobody knew anything, and it was total chaos.
Those rides going to New York to see my dad, man, God, they really sucked. It may seem a little bit I wanted to see my dad, but, I think when you're a kid, you tend to think more about yourself and how all these things are affecting you and, oh, my life sucks and my dad's in jail and, but when I became a father and I looked back on it, you think about, how hard it must have really been for him. And it was tough. So I think my dad going to jail kind of in a way taught me a lesson and him.
So again, there's a long story. You talk about Larry's rise to here and then his fall off the cliff. It took a long way to get there for Larry.
I'm one day away from buying RCA Record Division, and obviously that just wasn't going to happen. Mike Cahill shows up, says, hey, I'm going to meet you down at the courthouse, so I hope you have been thinking about things last night. I said, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking about, buddy. The only thing I was thinking about was all the money I just lost. He said, well, I'll see you down there. Cahill comes and he gets me out of the bullpen and he takes me into the U.S. Attorney's office. And I sit down and this U.S. Attorney comes in. His name was Bob Warren, Robert Warren. He was the head U.S. Attorney for the criminal division in Newark. So Warren says, so here's the deal, Formato, and it's going to be this way or no way. I said, okay, what is it? He said, well, we've got you in Florida, we got you in Denver, we got you in California, we got you in New York, and we got you here. So, and they're all RICOs. So what I'm going to try to do for you, if you cooperate with me, is I'm going to lump it all together for you, and we're just going to handle everything right here in Newark. And I said, lump what together? You think I'm going to plead to like fucking 5 RICOs? Are you crazy? I'm not doing that. He said, well, we're going to see what we can work out for you, but you got to do something for us. We want to get into that. Vault. And what I didn't know was they were already at the vaults, but the people that owned the vault wouldn't let them in. And they were having this big confrontation, and they were going to like drill through this bulletproof glass shit at the vaults. And because they just weren't going to let the feds in, because their whole system would be finished if they let the feds come through those doors. So it was either I give them the passcode or they wind up in a big to-do with the people that own the Zurich depository. So I gave in and I gave them the passcode because I had nothing else to lose or win at that point. And they said, well, we're going to bring you back again because we want to talk to you and we hope that you are smart enough to listen to what we have to say. He said, I'll listen to what you have to say, but I'm not giving up anybody, I'm telling you right now. And back to MCC I went again. And, you know, that became like a daily event every fucking day. They'd wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get dressed, go down to the bullpen, say hello to John Gotti, say hello to this guy, say hello to that guy. You know, it was, like I said, if you weren't a real wise guy, back in 1986, you weren't in jail. So these bus rides, you know, they became a daily routine for me, and it became very noticeable that, you know, every time we got on the bus, there would be one less guy that was riding with us. And because of that trial, you know, the government was turning these guys left and right, man. People started cooperating like crazy. And, you know, it's just like, who's going to go next? You know, who's not going to be here tomorrow? And it became like a thing. Everybody was joking about it. And everybody looking, are you going to be the next guy? You know, fuck you, you motherfucker. You think that's going to be me? Who the fuck you think this is? And that was the routine every day, every fucking day. It was the biggest organized crime trial and the longest, I think, that ever existed. One particular day I'm there, and Cahill comes and gets me, and he drags me into the U.S. Attorney's office, and there was like a big conference room, and my wife was there. I had a little baby, Christian, at the time. He said, well, we have an offer for you. We were able to get all the states to drop the RICOs, and we're going to charge you here, and we'll sentence you here in New Jersey, and you're going to plead out to tax fraud, stock fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, and pretty much any other fraud we could throw at you. And so, you know, I had my attorney work out a plea deal for me, and that's what I did. I had to fight my way to get out of jail. Fucking Judge Lechner, when he sentenced me the first time, he looked at me and he said, Mr. Formato, you are someone you know, or someone that's very, very close to you, has all that money. And he picked up his gavel and he started hitting his gavel on his desk, and he said, and I want all that money. And then he started giving me years like they were days, man. He rattled off 30 years, and I'm just looking around saying, what the fuck just happened?
I didn't think that it would be when he first got sentenced to 15 years. I didn't think it would be that, because we were talking about stupid stock. You know, there was people out there murdering people who would go to jail for a year and a half, who were actually killing people, evil people.
After a while, they started putting me in solitary, 24-hour lockdown. You know, 7 days a week, 24 hours. Well, actually, it's 23. You get out for an hour, you get to shower, make whatever phone calls you can make, and then they put you back in there. And that was their therapy, just to try to break you. This U.S. attorney, this bitch, wanted to prosecute Jilly Rizzo for the headlines and bring Sinatra in, and she was bribing witnesses left and right. And so she came to New Jersey to interview me, and she said, you know, Mike Fusco testified that you gave him $250,000 to bring to Mark Bateman in a suitcase. And we need you to collaborate that. I said, Mike, I would never give Mike Fusco $250,000. That never happened. He's fucking lying. She said, well, he already testified to that, and we need you to back it up. I said, I'm not doing it. You will do it. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Fuck you. It's just not going to happen. And that's the way I talked to them, these U.S. attorneys, because they were scumbags, and I knew they were scumbags. And they didn't like me, and I liked them a whole lot less. So, you know, I said no. So I went back to MCC, and I thought, well, that's the end of that. You know, I said no to her, and they're not going to ask any more of me. I wake up one morning, I'm really short of breath. I'm like, I couldn't take a deep fucking breath. So they sent me down to the infirmary. They took some chest x-rays, and they said, so we found a spot there. They found a spot, you know, on your lung. It's like the size of a dime. So we're going to send you out to Springfield, Missouri, to the hospital out there. So when I got there, they took me into this, they called it Stronghold 3, a big walk-in safe. That's what it was like. The doors were like big metal fucking safes. And you walked in there, and then there was 3 hospital beds. And they put me in the hospital bed to the left. The middle one was empty. And to the right was this guy, man. He looked like fucking Superman. I never seen a guy built like this guy was. Bald head, but muscles like crazy. His name was George Harp. Didn't have a tattoo on him. But George Harp was the leader back then of the Aryan Brotherhood. And he was the most feared prisoner in the whole federal system. So they locked me up with this guy. I didn't know who the fuck he was at the time. I just knew the guy looked like an animal. George Harp kept telling me, you got to stay strong. You got to be mentally strong, you know, and don't worry about these motherfuckers. I got you covered. You know, anything you need, I'll get it for you. And I was in this fucking hospital for 2 months and they didn't even do anything. They took an x-ray when I first got there and that was it. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm definitely going to die here. There's, you know, this is where I'm going to die. Because I knew there was a guy that was with me already in jail that had the same problem. They sent him there and he died there. So finally one day, they take me in to get a CAT scan done. Maybe a month and a half after the CAT scan, the doctor walks in and he says to me, well, there was nothing there. It was probably a calcium deposit. And you would think that I felt some kind of relief, but I didn't. It was like, I didn't believe him. Virginia Evans was the U.S. attorney in New York. So she calls me in the prison. And she said, you know, I'll bring you back to New Jersey, but, you know, you're gonna go to New York and you're going to testify. I said, I'm not going to testify. She said, oh, no, you will. Or you'll stay there for the rest of your life, and I'll see to it. When I first got arrested, they said Jay Surgeon was going to be arrested too. He never got arrested. But they wanted me to testify against Jay to have Jay arrested, but I never did that. So anyway, later on down the road, Jay made a deal for me with Morris County. I was in jail probably, I don't know, maybe 3.5 years. I was due for parole at this point, and the parole board denied me. And Virginia Evans was behind it. Chances of winning an appeal if you're denied parole are 1%. And I hired the best people you could hire, and I beat the parole board, and I beat the decision, and I was getting paroled. So Virginia Evans calls the judge in New Jersey and says, "Don't accept this plea deal, throw it out."
So when he was, I think they purposely reneged on his deal, you know, which was supposed to be only a couple years. They went back to the 15-year thing, I think was to pressure him into testifying.
So Jay Surgeon went and basically he saved my life. I had to do, I think, another 4 or 5 months, but I did it in the federal prison, and then I was free to get out. But man, it was fucked up. But still, Virginia Evans wouldn't let me out of jail. I told Bob Warren, the U.S. attorney in New Jersey, and Mike Cahill, I said, listen, I am not going to go to New York and testify at that fucking trial and back up anything that Mike Fusco says he's a fucking liar. And I'm not doing it. I'm not going to fucking say Mark Bateman did this when I know for sure he didn't do that. He said, just go there and just, you know, shake your head, do something, but just go appease this fucking lady. So that's what I did. I went there. I went to New York. There was this big-ass motherfucking trial in New York. I'm looking around out in the room out there, and I'm seeing all these old wise guys sitting in the room, and I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck did I let myself in for in this one? And so Virginia Evans starts asking me questions, and then, didn't in fact you give Mike Fusco $250,000 to bring to Mark Bateman? No, I did not. And you asked me to say it, and I didn't do it. And that was the end of that. She got all pissed off, and she asked the judge to dismiss me, and I didn't have to say anything else after that. And she let go of me because I embarrassed the shit out of her in the courtroom. So I'm sitting in MCC now after I told Virginia Evans to go fuck herself, and I'm just counting down the days at this point now, and I knew I was going to be getting out of jail soon, and there was absolutely nothing she could do at this point to stop it from happening. And a guard comes to me and he says, "You got an attorney visit." I go out there, and Mike Cahill's out there. He said, "Well, there's this congressional hearing that they're putting together. And every time they run names through the system, your name hits the bell first. So I was asked to come in here and talk to you, about going to Congress and testifying at Congress about, the penny stock market and about organized crime in the stock market and if there's anything they could do to fix all of that." And I said, "Mike, are you out of your fucking mind? Are you completely lost your mind? In a million years, I'm never gonna fucking do that." So, maybe a year before this visit with Mike, he came to see me another time. And he had a whole box of all those cassettes, those 5,000 cassettes. And he had a tape recorder. You're not allowed to have a tape recorder in jail. And he evidently went to the warden and got the warden to allow me to have this tape recorder and these tapes. And he said, "I'm bringing you these tapes because you got nothing else to do here anyway. Why don't you listen to them? Maybe, you might hear something that, might strike you. Maybe something we missed you might be able to let me know about." And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll listen to them." I wanted to hear them just to see what other people were talking about me. I was going to find out now who was really motherfucking me and who wasn't. So, yeah, I took the tapes and I started listening to them. And every time I was listening to myself talk on these tapes, I was thinking to myself, you know what? If I knew this guy outside, I don't like this guy at all, man. He's a scumbag. He's a real piece of shit, this guy. And so it was through these tapes, listening to these tapes, I got an insight as to exactly who I was and what I was back then and how I acted and how I pushed all my weight and my power around. And I didn't like the person that I heard. And it was listening to those tapes, I decided right then and there, I had to do something. I had to change my life. It literally got to me. But I went back to my cell and I started thinking, I got Sonny and I got Christian, and as of right now, the newspapers have me tagged as like the biggest creep in the whole fucking world. Maybe, just maybe I can do something that in the future they won't think I'm such a bad guy. So out of my family, my close family, everyone advised me not to do it, including my lawyers. Jay said, "Don't do it, Larry. You got nothing to do. There's nothing they can do for you. You're getting out of jail here in a couple months. Don't do it."
He led with his heart as opposed to what he had upstairs, and that hurt him.
I said, "You're right, Jay." I said, "I'm probably not going to do it." And then I just kept thinking about it, and out of a whim, I went to the payphone and I called Mike Cahill. I said, "Hey, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go to Congress, and I'm gonna try to figure out a way to talk about all this shit without giving up any names or anything else. I won't give up any names. So if they ask me about names, I'm just not going to do it." So basically the deal was, I'm going to go to Congress. I'm going to testify. They're not going to give out my identity, so no one's going to know it was me that told them how to fix the problems.
My danger is waiting.
So the day came, I was going to go to Congress. We go to Washington, and then when we landed in Washington, they put me in a van. Alfie, who was the head U.S. Marshal at the time, he said, "Hey, Larry, I'm sorry I got to do this to you." And he puts this hood over my fucking head. And he said, "Listen, I'm sorry, but I don't want anybody taking any pictures of you. So as soon as we get you inside, I'm going to take the hood off, and I'm going to lead you in there. Don't worry about it." So sure as shit, man, I had this hood on, and when I stepped out of that van, all the photographers were clicking pictures of me with a hood. But to my knowledge, they didn't know who I was. They just saw this hooded guy walking into the building. So I get into Congress, and they put me in front of the panel, the congressional panel. And behind me, they had all, I don't know what you would call it, some kind of screen so that the photographers couldn't take my pictures. And then they altered my voice so no one would be able to recognize my voice. And it was a little rough going in the beginning because they didn't get the alteration of the voice really good, and we had to stop and start. But finally they got it down, and I was able to give my testimony, but I gave a statement first, and then I started answering questions. But every single time, you know, one of these congressmen would ask me, can I be specific, more specific? You know, tell us some names of some of these people that you introduced the organized crime people into the penny stock market. And I said, I refuse to do that. I'm not going to do it. And that was it. And then what I did is I told them what I felt they could do to change the penny stock market and make things better so that, you know, people couldn't be cheated as badly as they were cheated during my reign. I told them what I did, and I told them how to fix what I did. And so there was a lot of cheating going on. Throw away the pink sheets and make it all digital, just like you do on NASDAQ stocks. Make it all have a symbol and put it on the screen, just like everything else. If they have a record, make them be bonded. If they're with a brokerage firm, make that brokerage firm bond them. I let them know that if someone was a mover and a shaker, somewhere along the line, organized crime has their hand on the shoulder of that person. You're not going to get rid of the organized crime, but you can get rid of that person. Don't license them. Don't give them that authority. Don't let them be a promoter. And so all these things that I told Congress that day when I left Congress, I was 100% certain they were not going to do anything about it.
And I don't believe that he was treated as fairly as he should have been after doing that.
And the marshals took me back to New York, and back to my cell I went. About 11 o'clock at night, one of the guards, Coffee, I called him Coffee, he came and knocked on my cell door, and he said, hey, Larry, man, I got to show you something. Come on out here. And they had a TV in the kitchen, and it had cable connected to it, cable news. And there on the fucking news was a picture of me with the mask on and a picture of me without a mask. And the headlines were reading, Lorenzo Larry Formato delivers a blistering indictment against organized crime in the penny stock market. And the whole story about how I testified for hours in front of Congress and all this bullshit. So basically, you know, the government totally fucked me. They just hung me out to dry. And of course, you know, when all the wise guys saw this shit, you know, it isn't like today you can look up anything and find out what somebody said. Back then, you couldn't look up anything. All you could count on was what they said in the news. So nobody knew back then whether or not I ratted them, whether I gave out names or anything. So I was labeled like King fucking Rat. You know, they had this picture of me with a hood on. What else are they supposed to think? You know, so bottom line to the whole thing was, you know, I got absolutely nothing for going to Congress. I was getting out of jail, so I didn't get a get out of jail free card. I didn't get any money. I didn't get anything. What I got was totally fucked. What the public got was the Securities Act of 1990, which was the biggest Securities Act that was ever passed since 1933. And where people said I stole millions and millions and millions of dollars and I robbed millions of dollars from people, it's all true.
Then again, you made a lot of money for people, and maybe you truly represent what capitalism is all about. You created something that didn't exist before so they could express it in legislation that ended up protecting probably millions of investors and people from losing trillions of dollars during the last 30 or 40 years.
I think sometimes good people can do bad things, and I think my dad is a good person. I think that he's a generous person, he's a great father, and you know, I've learned a lot from him, especially what not to do and you know, what to do. And you know, I still lean on him for advice even today.
The United States Congress adopted every single thing I told them to do, and they put it into law. So because of my direct testimony, the Securities Act of 1990 came to be. Does that make me a hero? No, it just makes me a guy that did the right thing.
The whole reason behind why we decided to do this documentary is to really highlight the importance of this legislation and how my father's testimony led to the Penny Stock Reform Act of 1990. It was the largest legislation for securities since 1933, and it had saved millions and millions and millions of dollars for people, you know, over the years, and, you know, prevented who knows how much fraud and corruption, you know, moving forward. And, you know, that really is why we did this, so that we can get that story out and let people understand how really important that legislation was and how important his testimony was leading up to it.
For the most part, particularly with his family and his life and his age now and what he did in his life, that he contributed a lot to American society. I think he contributed a lot to American capitalism. And I think that we need more people like Larry Formato.
So after the government totally fucked me, I had, I don't know, 4 months to get out. I was going to be paroled out of jail. I had 5 years to face in parole and another 5 of probation because of good old Judge Lechner, that piece of shit that he is. Anyway, the U.S. Attorney came to me and he said, we can't let you out on parole. We can't let you out of jail. We can't do anything unless you go into the witness protection program, because we know everybody out there is going to want to kill you because of your testimony at Congress. No one knows what happened, but everyone ran for the hills. And they all think, you know, you gave up names and ratted on them. And you're either going to stay here or you're going to go into witness protection program. So I told Robin, my wife at the time, that, you know, if I want to get out of jail, I have to go into witness protection program. And she said, absolutely not. I'm not going. And sure as shit, you know, 5 years I was in jail, and 5 years almost, she would come and see me almost every week. Bring my son Christian, Sonny would come and see me. And after 5 years, she said, fuck you, I'm not going. And she didn't go. But I did. Me and Sonny went.
That was a interesting experience, to say the least. You know, but really, to be honest, I didn't care. It had been, you know, 5 years that, you know, I hadn't been with my dad, and, you know, I was, I think, just about 18 years old at the time, and, you know, I was ready to go. I didn't have anything left behind me. I was ready for a new start, and I was ready to go.
And they let me out of jail February 1st, 1991, and after being in jail since 1986. And it sucked, and I had no choice but to go into the witness protection program, and there was nothing worse in the world than that.
Money's got me like, money's got me like, whoa. Money's got me like, the money's got me like, whoa. Money's got me like, money's got me like, whoa. Day and night, the money's got me like, whoa. Money's got me like, money's got me like, whoa. Money's got me like, the money's got me like, whoa. Money's got me like, money's got me like, whoa. Day and night, the money's got me like, whoa. Day and night, the money's got me like. I've opened the door and I've seen the light, but I may not make it through the night. I know the way, and I know I can. But tomorrow, I'm still a broken man. And if I don't find my way out of this maze, there's a good chance that I'll never change my dangerous ways. Am I doing wrong? How did I ever make it this long? I'm wore out and wasted. I'm counting the days, trying to hold back my dangerous ways.